Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about how you can create your own personal finance projection or forecast or outlook for the near future and beyond that. Now, a financial projection or forecast is typically something that you do for a business, the finances of a business. And this is basically just looking at the future outcome, the possibilities of that business. So you would look at the possible revenue, the expected revenue, your expected expenses, the budget that the company has had, and so on. However, we can also do this for ourselves because technically if you look at yourself as a business, you make money, you spend money, you can create budgets, you have expectations of your money, you can really create a plan and look at a solid financial projection for yourself. Now you can create this projection for the next quarter or the next 6 months, the next year, the next 3 years, the next 10 years if you wanted to. I think the longest you should go is probably about 3 years or so, and looking at a whole year is the easiest. And then from there you can kind of break it down and determine how it will work for your quarters. With that forecast you create, you can find out or kind of predict how much you can expect to pay off in debt over the next few months or the next year, how much you can invest over that time, how much money you can save by a specific date, when you could buy a home, and whatever other financial goals you have. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. The first thing related to all that, and something that's really important, is to set financial goals. If you don't know what your goals are when it comes to finances, then you really won't be able to create a projection. I mean, you can still determine how your money will be allocated and how things will go, but without a clear goal in mind, you can't actually adjust things and go after those goals. So that is the first step. It is very important, but it's also very simple. Just be sure you get really clear on them and then write them down. Always write down your goals. It helps whether they're for finances or not. If you need some ideas, I do have a video on some money goal ideas for 2021, as well as a blog post for that, which I will link down below. Step number 2 is to create a budget and or track your spending. So if you already have a budget, then that is great. You will use an average of those numbers from your budget. And if you don't have a budget and you never have budgeted in your life, that is where you're going to start, and you will be budgeting from now on. I do have a video on how to create a budget. Again, that will be linked down below if you need help with that, but that is the next step, and that will help you to predict your financial future. If you go and watch that video, you'll see that one of the steps of creating a budget is going back for the last few months, at least 3 months, and adding up all of your spending and breaking it down by category. And then from that, you can create a rough budget based on that spending and something that actually works for you, is realistic for you and your lifestyle. And then we will go based off of those numbers for your financial projection. So whether you already have your budget or you need to create a budget, you will then be able to determine what the total amount is left over after your expenses. So your income minus your expenses is the amount that you are left over with at the end of the month. And if you do this and you find out, again, this is just an average because your budget does change weekly, but if you do this and you find out that your income minus your expenses is a positive number, this is good. You can work with that positive number for now, and if it's not quite where you want it to be, then you can also work on increasing that. Now, if your income minus your expenses is a negative number, this can be problematic. So this means that you are living paycheck to paycheck, or you are going into further debt each month, and you do also want to start there. So you will want to start budgeting, but also check out my videos on how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, because really your first goal should be to end that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck or going into further debt. You can still follow the steps that I have in this video, but it's important to address that issue first, and then you can really start to notice the progress in your finances. Step number 3 is to create a layout of your year. We can call this a year at a glance. This was actually inspired by one of my clients, and she knows who she is because she did this before I told her to do so, and she inspired me to encourage my other clients to do this as well, because it's a good predictor of the money that you need throughout the year. So basically all that you're going to do is either take a sheet of paper or go on a spreadsheet and put all the months of the year across the top, or however you want to organize it in your spreadsheet. And for each of those months, write down a list for each month that an event happens or there's a holiday happening, birthdays, car maintenance, car registration, any other holidays. Just write down every single thing for each month that pertains to you, and then the estimated cost of that event. So I will put up a screenshot of some examples of from my year at a glance, and you can see that it's mostly birthdays, and then I put the cost of what I expect to spend for that birthday, and this is just an estimate, and you can look back at previous years to see what you have spent in those months. So once you have all of that, you'll want to organize it by category, so gifts or car maintenance, travel, whatever it may be that you have on your year at a glance. And then with this information, we can continue down this list and use it for your financial plan. The next step is to determine how to allocate your money and a timeline for your money. So with all the information that you just did in those first 3 steps, you can now create a plan with that money and a timeline for every plan. To give you an example, let's say that your income minus your expenses comes out to an average of $300 left over at the end of every month. Of course, this may fluctuate, but let's say that we are working with a number of 300. You can determine an estimate of what you would be left over with at the end of each month, depending on each situation, but we're gonna work with that number, and I'm gonna take you through a couple of things that you can determine for your financial plan. So the first allocation would be your emergency fund. I do think this should be the first step when it comes to allocating your money, because an emergency fund is really important. This has been proven to me several times because emergencies happen, and it is very comforting and nice to have the money there just in case. So you want to decide on a number that you are comfortable with, and considering 2020, I know a lot of people prefer to have a higher emergency fund now. I know that is the case for myself, but everybody's situation is different. So going back to that example of, if you have $300 left over at the end of every month, then it's gonna take you, and you're starting at 0, then it's gonna take you about 3.5 months to save up a $1,000 emergency fund. Or if you want to get to $3,000 and you have $300 left over every month, how long will that take? So if you don't have your emergency fund where you want it, I do suggest you start there, and you can see now that with that money that you have predicted, you can now determine when it is that you can expect to reach that emergency fund total. The next thing are sinking funds. You guys all know, it's no secret, sinking funds are one of my favorite things, one of the best financial decisions I've made, and they are extremely helpful, and I will probably never stop doing them. Sinking funds are also highly customizable, and this is why we're gonna go back and look at your year at a glance, because from that, you broke it down into categories, and those areas you probably want to save for throughout the year. Because what typically happens, I'll give an example of Christmas. People will typically get to November or December and be like, oh, I need to buy Christmas gifts, but they don't have any actual cash saved up to purchase those Christmas gifts. So what do? They charge it to their credit card and go into debt to buy gifts. Ideally, what you would want to do is save every month for gifts, or save a specific amount through a specific timeline and achieve whatever amount it is that you want to be able to spend on gifts come Christmas time. That's exactly the idea behind sinking funds. So if you're looking at that year at a glance, how much do you need to save by, let's say you have a birthday to celebrate for somebody in your family by May. How much money do you need to save up in gifts or holiday fund for you to be able to pay for that without going into further debt? For another example with that, let's say that you pay your dental premium annually. So you just pay one lump sum in December every year for your dental insurance. So that total is $540. How much do you need to save to pay $540 without it really affecting your finances? You would need to save $45 every month in a sinking fund for you to get to that $540. Then you can pay it in December without going into debt, without it even feeling like it affects your finances. Whatever it is that you decide on, you would now need to go back to your budget, add that in, create a category for your sinking funds, a line item for sinking funds, and add in the total and adjust as necessary. Now you can determine how much money you have left over outside of that. The next area is debt. So you probably already have your minimum debt payments as a part of the line items in your budget. And maybe your emergency fund is already funded, or maybe you don't want to worry about sinking funds, or maybe you want to do a mixture of all three, but you can also use your leftover money from the end of the month to put extra payments toward your debt on top of your minimum payments. This is how you're going to pay off your debt quicker and obviously progress more when it comes to your finances. Now, based on the number that you calculated for your income minus your expenses, the leftover money you have, you can determine how long it will take you to pay off your debt. How many months, how many years. But don't forget to also account for interest. Personally, I prefer to do this kind of manually. I am able to set up calculations in my Google Sheets document and make it all work for me. But there are resources that you can use. There is a really good debt reduction calculator that I can link to down below, and that is very helpful. You can mess with all the numbers, the interest rates, anything like that, and it will tell you by which month and year you will finish paying it off and the amount of interest you will pay. So I do suggest starting there if you're not comfortable with spreadsheets, but this is something you can also determine on your own. Another thing is that if you want to pay off your debt by a specific date, you can also determine how much you actually need to put toward your debt to reach that goal. And if the amount that you have left over at the end of the month is not at that number, then you're going to need to figure out how to lower your expenses and increase that number, or just increase your income in general. The next area is investing. Now, I am no investing pro, but I do suggest you start with your employer. So if your employer offers a retirement account, especially one with a match, then I do suggest you start there. And then whatever that may be, if you prefer to completely max it out, or if you prefer just to contribute enough to get the full match, then add that to your line item in your budget, and then you will see your income minus your expenses will adjust. Otherwise, you can look into investing in your Roth IRA or brokerage account, or both. There's a lot of options out there. Like I said, I'm no pro, but there are options out there if you do not have something offered from your employer. When it comes to that, you can determine how much you need to put aside each month for maxing out your 401k or maxing out your Roth IRA. For example, if you want to max out your Roth IRA, the current limit is $6,000 in a year. So you would need to contribute $500 every single month in order to reach that limit, or technically about $400 if you were going to go into April of the next year. You do have a little bit of a longer time span when it comes to investing in your Roth IRA, but that is something you can determine with the numbers that you have planned out. The final area would be any big expenses. So like buying a house, maybe you want to open your own store or get married and pay for the wedding. These are all big things and important things to plan for. And if you want to achieve them by a certain time, all of this stuff still applies to that as well. These things may not be a part of your near future, but it is something that you still could create a projection for and kind of predict the outcome of how things will turn out for that. The next step is to break your goals down further. For most financial goals, there's a lot of things that go on behind it, and there's a lot of ways for you to break it down even more so. When you break your goals down, you make little micro goals that makes achieving your goals even more possible. I'll give you a couple of examples on how to break down your goals. So if you want to pay off $20,000 this year, let's break that down further. $20,000 of debt in 1 year is also $1,667 in a month, or $385 per week, or $55 a day. So now you can start to see, how can I come up with $55 extra each day to put toward my debt in order for me to pay off $20,000 of debt in 1 year. Now, for a goal that is not just based around a number, let's go with if you want to purchase a home. The first part of breaking that down would be saving up 20% or however much of a down payment you would like to, and determining what number that is and how long will it take for you to save that money up. The next thing would be to get approved for a loan. How do you even do that? You can determine how to do that. You can find a real estate agent, get recommendations, you can read reviews. My sister's a real estate agent if you need one, and you're in the Atlanta area, comment down below, let me know. The next step would be to determine the city you want to live in, create a pros and cons list, and then research whatever it is that you need to when it comes to buying a home. There's probably a lot more for that one. And then once you break your goals down further, that goes to the next step. So your next step is to determine what needs to change. And unless you're setting easy and unchallenging goals, there's probably going to be some things you need to change in your life in order to actually achieve those goals. So if you're looking at your numbers and you're looking at your projection based off of your current numbers and you're not happy about it, then what do you need to change? This is a really important step because this is what's going to allow you to adjust and actually make bigger progress on those goals. So you probably do have quite a few options. I'm going to run through some of those. So you could move somewhere cheaper or get a roommate in order to save money and increase that leftover money at the end of the month. You could sell stuff that you don't need, way to increase your income. You could sell your car if it's too much money. That's another way to reduce your expenses and possibly get income from your sold car. Adjust some line items in your budget. So this may be reducing them. You may need to call companies or do some research on finding a lower cost for those line items, or just completely cut them out if they're not necessary. You can find a way to increase your income, and this would be with a side hustle. Maybe you need to get a second job. Maybe you need to do a complete career change and increase your income that way. Focus on paying off your debt with the highest minimum payment. And that way that frees up that line item. So if you have a minimum payment on a credit card that is $400, that's a lot of money. So if you're able to focus on that, pay that off first, you now have an extra $400 to work with. That's kind of like what I'm doing with my car. My car payment is $383. And if I pay off my car, then I'll have $383 to put to my student loans now. And you can negotiate your interest rates to hopefully save money. You can call your credit card lenders and see if they have any offers to lower your interest rate on your credit cards, and that will save you money. And you may need to refinance depending on the type of loan. I did want to give an example of a situation that I put myself in order to make changes, because I knew something needed to change at the end of 2019 after I realized I had spent over $5,000 on the miscellaneous line item of my budget. Now, some of that was somewhat necessary, but a lot of it was not, and I knew that I wanted to make more progress on my debt, and I also wasn't happy with my savings rate. So what I did for 2020, as many of you know, is commit to a no spend year. I have several videos talking about my no spend year. And what that allowed was for me to pay off the same amount of debt as I did in 2019. So I paid off another $20,000 of debt. But in 2019, I didn't have a good savings rate. I didn't end up with thousands of dollars saved. But for 2020, when I did my no spend year, I ended up having an emergency fund of $4,000. And then I had sinking funds that, throughout the year I accumulated thousands in as well. So if I didn't commit to a no spend year for 2020, I probably wouldn't have achieved those savings goals. So maybe I would have been able to pay off the $20,000 of debt, but I probably wouldn't have saved as much money as I did. And that's exactly what I did. I determined the problem, figured out what I needed to change, and I made the change. The final step is to adjust as necessary. So as you go through all these steps and you make changes to your lifestyle, make changes to your money, you're gonna start realizing you have more wiggle room in your budget or more leftover money at the end of the month for you to put to your various goals. So that $300 that I mentioned at the beginning of this video will soon turn to $500. So where can that extra $200 a month get you in your finances? How much does that impact your financial projection? A few months after that, because you should be regularly adjusting, you should be doing this regularly, to be honest, because that's how you're going to keep on making progress and keep on adjusting your free money. So maybe in a few months, you turn that 500 into 1,000 because you paid off one of your high minimum payment debts. So now you have $1,000 left to work with each month. And where is that going to get you? Instead of with just $300, you now have $1,000, and you can pay off debt, you can save money, you can go and travel, you can start investing. Any of your goals, you can now start allocating with that larger lump sum of free money per month. And if you keep doing this, before you know it, you're going to have, again, you're going to keep increasing that number. You're probably going to end up with a fully funded emergency fund. You're going to be debt-free. You're going to be investing 20% or more of your income. You're going to be on your path to buying a house. Whatever your goals are, you're going to be getting closer to them. I guarantee it. If you keep on working through this and keep on adjusting, it will happen. So if you don't create this financial outlook, this financial forecast for your own finances, it can be hard to see where you need to make the changes. And this is really powerful for that reason. And truly, it can be life-changing. There are people who have gone from, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and are now retired, and they're retired after, maybe they implement some changes throughout 10 years and they're in a completely different financial situation. So you are not stuck where you are. If you are in debt, this is not how you're going to be living forever if you actually prioritize your money and make a change and actually plan things are. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that is definitely not forever. You can get out of that. If you are, renting an apartment with 4 different roommates and you're sick of it, this is not your forever situation. You can make a plan to purchase a home. You just need to get clear on those goals, get clear on your financial outlook right now, and see what you can change. So I know this video was quite a lot. I do have a blog post on the exact same topic. Everything is broken down on my blog. I will link that down below. Or if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section, or you can email me. That is also in the description box. So if you haven't done this already, I highly encourage you to try it out. I think it's actually a lot of fun, and you can really see your potential when it comes to your money now and after you make those changes. So you also may be surprised by your results. You might be surprised by what you can achieve in the next year or so. So if that is the case for you, comment that down below. Please let me know what you think of this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.